watching a beginner's guide to video editing in Photoshop with Tracy Marr. In this lesson, let's take a look at some of the interesting things you can do with adjustment layers. So what is an adjustment layer? An adjustment layer is a feature in Photoshop that lets you add tonal and color adjustments to layers without destroying the pixels. So in other words, it's non-destructive. It can be turned on and off, and you can preserve your original image, or in this case your original footage. Adjustment layers are one of the most exciting features in Photoshop when it comes to editing video, because you got tons of options with them. And the great thing is that you don't really need to have a lot of experience, because you can get amazing results by experimenting. So I'm going to show you how to do that, but first let me show you an example of what can be achieved with some adjustment layers. Photoshop allows you to create what are called actions, and these are basically recordings of actions or steps that you've taken to create a particular effect that can be automatically applied again and again to different images or footage. So I've got some actions that I've created, and I'm going to show you one of them applied here to this particular footage that I've got. This particular action is called Lith Print. It simulates an old style black and white photo effect. So let me just press continue in these. This was originally created for a photo, but it works pretty well on video too, as you can see. So if I pull this back and I run the footage, you can see that we got a fairly unique effect going on. It's been applied to the entire video. But you can see that if I hide these layers, I've got my original video beneath, and it's in its original state. There's been no editing on the pixels whatsoever. So this is a great way to add effects and color adjustments and different tonal effects to your videos and create some great looking footage. I'll just give you an example of the range and the different effects you can have by running another action here. So let me run this color warm. You can see that this has saturated the footage so that we've got a much deeper sort of color range going on there. And let me show you how easy it is to adjust the layers when you run one of these actions, or when you create a series of adjustment layers. So I'm going to run an old photo effect here. Let me continue to click through these. Okay, so we've got this effect. And let me rewind. And you can see that that's a pretty unique effect. If I go into the effect folder here, you can see that there are a lot of different adjustments that have been applied to this to get that effect. There's been curves, exposure, gradient maps, and so on. I can easily edit any of those by clicking on them. And you can see here I have the gradient map. I could change the color if I wanted, or leave it as black and white, or anything can be changed while leaving the original footage intact underneath. So adjustment layers are really great for this purpose, and I'm going to show you how you can experiment and different things you can do to create interesting effects with these. Let me just remove the effect here so that we've got our original clip. If I open it up, you can see that we have our video layer there. Okay, so I'm going to click on this small little icon here, and this allows me to add different adjustments. So let's start with something like levels. When you work with levels, you can adjust the blacks and whites in your footage. So if I pull on these sliders, you can see that I can deepen up the blacks and I can bring in more whites, and already you can see that that's a significant adjustment to the original footage. Of course, I can create many adjustment layers, so let me add another one. This time we'll go for something like Vibrance, which again is about bringing in contrast and color to the photo, but I can desaturate it here a little bit, make it almost black and white but not quite. And I can add more strength here by sliding over on the Vibrance slider to the right. So you can see that you can once again have significant effects with small adjustments. Let's go into color balance. Let's work with the highlights, and let's add in more reds. So we pull up towards the red, maybe a few more pinks. Maybe a few more blues. So this kind of gives a cold kind of feel to the image. If you wanted a warm feel, you might go up towards the yellows. You might go in more neutrally on the magenta green option there, and bring in more reds rather than the cyan. So you can see again some pretty good results. Let me see what else there is. So if we go into adjustment layers, we can also add a gradient map. So this default black and white gradient map will obviously turn your image black and white, but you can, you know, experiment and use any of the presets there, or you can create your own. So you could just click on the option here to, let's continue with the sort of warm tones and have this light orange going to sort of a deep brown. Okay, so that looks a little bit crazy at the moment, but you can change the blending mode and you could make that multiply. You can make it soft light, which is a lot better, and you can lower the opacity if you don't want the effect to be as strong. Posterize is another great effect. It's fun. Let me show it to you. You can add a sort of a poster-like effect, and you can increase or decrease the amount of posterization that goes on by adjusting the levels here. Okay, so you can then choose to hide some of the effects and see what interesting results you get from that by mixing and matching 2 or 3 effects. And you can also then, if you have a lot of effects, select them all, Command or Control G to group them, so that it's much easier to look at the impact that it's had on your footage. Okay, so I'm going to remove the poster effect and leave it like this. Okay, so that's how you can edit your footage pretty simply using adjustment layers, and in the next video I'll show you how you can animate text.